Good evening, everyone. Today is June the 10th, and this is the meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee. So the first thing on the agenda, we have reports from the Internal Auditor, Jennifer George from RPT CPAs. So let's go over the first report on the claims and judgments, please.
Pardon me, ma'am, can you turn your mic on?
Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll start with the two-page report. And this is the focus area that we were requested to look at. And what we were asked to look at is the judgments and claims and the special education settlements expenditures for the 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25 school years. So on page 2, this is where we get into essentially what this is what we looked for and what we saw. So we requested a detail of the judgments and claims expenditure account for each of those 3 school years, which we did receive the detail of that account. And then we also requested a listing of the special education settlement expenditures. We were not able to get a printout of the account where those special education settlement expenditures were coded, account or accounts. But we were provided with the supporting documentation for 2 of those settlements. So what we noted is that for the 22-23 school year, there were no expenditures in the judgments and claims account. For the 23-24 school year, there were 2 judgments and claims settlements, and that totaled $9.28 million. And then the 2 special education settlement documentation that we received were from that 23-24 school year that totaled $13,750. And then for the 24-25 school year, there were 2 judgments and claim settlements that totaled $7.3 million. Then we looked at the district's policies and procedures for how these things, these types of expenditures should be handled. And we noted that all the settlements require board approval and that the district had several policies in place that addressed these types of issues. Then we looked at the actual settlement agreements to make sure that they received the necessary approvals. And all of the judgments and claims settlement agreements were signed by the board president and the district notary, so we had no issues with those. And the 2 special education settlements that we were given were approved by the Board of Education during their May and June 2024 meetings. Then we asked for additional supporting documentation for the judgments and claims account because there were some journal entries that were in there, and we were not provided with the support for the journal entries. We also there were journal entry support and purchase orders provided with the information for the 2 special education settlements, and we noted that those were approved by the Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners. That is all I can report on that.
So my question is, why was she not able to obtain a list of the special ed settlement expenditures?
So I think one of the things that the auditor said in the report was that we don't have a specific line or budget for special education expenditures. They're by settlement, which is approved and it goes to the board. So, and I just have a point of a clarification. So the only 2 expenditures we had was in the 22-23 totaling $13.75.
Those are the only 2 that we received support for.
Right.
But I don't have a complete listing, so I don't know how many there actually were.
Right. So we don't have a separate budget line for special ed. We don't usually have many payouts for special education expenditures. The majority, sometimes when we do have a settlement with special education, Sometimes, and those are all brought to the board. We just don't expend. We have to have board approval in order for that PO to be released. Sometimes the settlements are in terms of services. Sometimes it's a placement settlement. So it's not necessarily a cash payout, maybe programs and services. So we don't have a dedicated line because, as you can see, we don't, I mean, year over year, we don't have a large payout for special education expenditures in that manner.
Thank you. Maybe we should make a code just for special ed, so in the future, we could track that if necessary. Maybe we can just assign a code to that.
I mean, that's definitely feedback that I can bring back. You know, we don't necessarily always want a budgeted expense. I mean, we can pull the settlements that we do have because they have to come to the board and they have to be discussed. And usually we do discuss any type of settlement agreement that we have at a special ed. It's something with legal. Legal comes in with the exceptional learners department to review the case and make those agreements with students and parents as they come along. It's not something that we do kind of opposite, but I could definitely bring that feedback back.
It's a similar question. Is not having that documentation or that line item an anomaly, or is that consistent with how other districts do it? That's for the auditor.
I can research that. You know, it's not something, because as you can see, year over year, we don't have that many expenditures. We really, when it comes to looking at judging claims for, even for this, we look back at our board docs and our board resolutions around settlements. We don't have many that go to the level where a cash award is given. And as you can see, over the 3 years, it was 13.7 for over 3 years.
But that was for the auditor.
Right, understood. Thank you.
Right.
But for the auditor who audits other school districts, is the way we do it consistent with other districts, or do other districts line item the expense?
It varies. However, it should be consistently going when you have them to the same account. So you should be able to print out whatever detail of whatever that account is. Like you wouldn't code it to one to this account and another one to a different account.
Thank you.
I have no more questions on this one. We can move on to the risk assessment, please.
All right, so the next larger document is the internal audit risk assessment for the 24-25 school year. This is required by New York State. And so the process is that we have a universe of areas that the New York State Education Department has laid out that they expect the internal auditors to look at. There's about 20 different categories. And so the way the report is laid out is for each category, there is a section that says summary of considerations. That's what we were looking for in that area. Then the notes and observations is what we actually saw. And then the recommendations are if we have any recommendations to make for that area. The way that we conducted our audit was that we we interviewed a lot of people from all different areas of the district. And then we also requested supporting documentation because ultimately what we were trying to do was find out what are your policies and procedures, and then we make a selection of a few items to make sure that they were actually followed. It's a very lengthy report. I'm not going to go through every area in detail because we'll be here all night. So there's just a few things that I wanted to point out to you, but I encourage you to read the whole thing because it gives you some good information. On page 4, under governance and control environment, obviously there's been some turnover, the board meetings are lengthy, and the district website does have information, which is good. We noted that there were several policies. We used the required policy listing from NSBA. We reviewed your policies compared to that. We noted that there were some policies that had not been adopted yet. So we recommend that you go through and make sure that all of the legally required policies are there. And then we also noted that the board policies appear to be under construction or under renovation, I should say, because there was the first section that was all laid out very neat and clean, and then some of the later sections looked like they hadn't gotten that far yet. So we recommend to keep going through the organization. Also, Every board member is required to undergo fiscal and governance training during the first year of their term, and we asked for copies of that for all of the current board members, and we noted that we did not obtain some, whether the district didn't have them or whether the training hadn't been done yet. However, all the ones that were missing were for new board members who had a whole year to do it. So that we just recommend keeping copies whenever people go through the training. All right. Next on page 5, under financial accounting and reporting, there's been some turnover in the accounting group. When we came out to do our field work in March, the new treasurer had been there for a week, so he wasn't really very oriented. We did note that there was a dedicated banking laptop, which is good. And then we also noted after our field work that the treasurer left. So obviously you've got some turnover there, which is probably leading to some of the other issues that we noted, because the treasurer's reports for July, August, and September of 2024 were not provided to the board until March of 2025, which obviously we want to try to be as close to on time as possible. We did note that there are SOPs, standard operating procedures, for finance-related activities. We obtained a copy of these procedures from the purchasing agent. We did not get any of the other SOPs. They were offered and then not actually provided. So I do know that they exist because everyone referred to them. Everyone mentioned them. I just didn't get copies of them. And then as of the first week of March, when we were here doing the field work, we were told the bank reconciliations were only done through September of 2024, which again is not good. We asked for copies of those bank reconciliations for September 2024, and we were not given them. So I don't know. I was told they were done for September. I did not actually get copies of them. So our recommendation is bank reconciliations are number one. You know, even with all the turnover, you've got to focus on getting those bank reconciliations done, because in my experience, 90% of errors can be found just from doing bank reconciliations.
John, at the last Audit and Finance Committee, I think we asked if they reconciled the accounts to date. And I think they told us they were up to date with it.
So this was as of March when we were here. So
It's
it's,
going back to March, okay.
Yes.
So it's probably up to date now.
Yeah, that's why, even when you were in March, we did have those reconciliations, so, because those are the treasury reports and those bank reconciliations. So I'm surprised that this was not provided to you, because when you came in with the new treasurer, he was reconciling, I think, like December. We were behind because of the appointment of the treasurer, but I'm pretty surprised that you didn't receive those reconciliations, because we're pretty much up to date. I think on this board meeting, I think we have April's. So I'm kind of puzzled by that one. We can follow up.
okay. So basically our overall recommendation is bank reconciliations and treasurer's reports. Those are top priority. We've got to make sure those get done timely. Next, on page 6, under the auditing section, the district's June 30, 2024 audited financial statement was not finished until December of 2024, which is after the state deadline of October 15th. Again, there was a lot of turnover that delayed getting that done. The single audit, the federal single audit, was filed on time. We did see that. And we also requested a copy of the final extra classroom financial statement for June 2024 and the annual financial report, the ST3. We did not receive copies of those. And so our recommendation is just focus on getting the accounting work done so that the audits are done timely and filed with SED. State aid and grants, the business administrator was previously the director of grants, and when he moved over there was just a gap, and he was trying to do both jobs. So difficult to do 2 full-time jobs at the same time. Page 7 is under cash management and investments. The district does have policies regarding the approval of financial institutions. We noted that in the reorg minutes, the NI class was not listed as an approved financial institution. It's an investment, so just that should be approved. And then also just considering annually getting the list of the bank accounts and just approving them, because what you want to make sure is that you don't have 50 bank accounts, right, that are unnecessary. So the board should just look at them once a year and make sure that there's a purpose for all of these accounts. Next, page 8, petty cash. Very immaterial number. However, the board does approve petty cash assignments in the reorg minutes, and the amount that was approved was $2,000. What was actually listed as petty cash on the trial balance was $8,034. So I don't know why more petty cash was issued than what was authorized. And so we just recommend that on a regular basis, you reconcile that and make sure, obviously not big dollar amounts, but it's cash. Sure.
Is it possible to bring that account back to $2,000 and transfer that money out to somewhere else? That $6,000?
So with the petty cash, there's also a policy that we've been asking to update, 6670, because I think what we do is we issue once based on that initial resolution. And I know that there were some concerns with that policy, so it's something that needs to be looked at through the policy committee. And we don't really redistribute or do anything until we have the reconciliation of the receipts. So depending on if principals or the library or different things. Now, I think in this, there was a change in the amount, and the policy is $100 now. It needs to be $100 now. So we need to look at this policy and revamp it to make sure that everything is in alignment.
Under purchasing, the only thing I want to mention there is that, at least as of March when we were here, there was an acting purchasing agent, so it's an important position. I know it's a struggle to fill these positions, but it should stay on the list of things that we need a full-time permanent person there. Page 9, accounts payable and cash disbursements. All of the policies and procedures that we were told about are fine, but we made 5 selections just to verify that the quotes and the supporting documentation were actually done in accordance with the policies, and we were not provided the information. So I don't know whether their policies are being followed or not.
For the claims auditor?
No, accounts payable and cash disbursements. What's bolded here?
Okay.
Yep.
I did look back on the previous one. It was the treasurer's reports and the reconciliation were not provided because they were approved by the board on March 11th. So that's what it was. We had a timing thing. So the reconciliation reports for July, though they, was after we appointed Mr. Curry, and we did 3 reports around March 11th for that board meeting. So that is probably why you did not receive them.
Okay. Next on page 10 is payroll and personnel. It's a large write-up because there's a lot of moving pieces in here, and this involves HR and payroll. And so the policies all seem fine. We did make selections of individuals to review their pay rates and also their personnel files. And for the 6 people that we looked at, their pay rates were all fine. We didn't note any discrepancies with that. But we did note that of those people that we looked at, there was a couple of items missing from their personnel files. 1 was missing I-9 information, and 3 were missing the retirement option form. And I looked back to see if these were old files or newer files, and they were ranged from 1991 to 2021. So it's not that it was just, we didn't put them in there back in the old days. One of the things that we recommend is that the personnel documents be scanned and stored electronically. I know this was mentioned as a wish list item that people would like to get done, but there's a lot of boxes and a lot of paper. And then also, wherever possible, to make the employee timesheets electronic. Anytime you're dealing with paper and input, it's just opportunities for error. So that's on the payroll. Next, on page 11, travel and conferences. Under the use of district credit cards policy, the board is supposed to approve the use of district-owned credit cards at the annual reorganization meeting. We did not see that authorization in the July 2024 reorg minutes. I'm told it did happen, I just don't know where or when. So we recommend that annual authorization is done in the reorg minutes. And then also, we requested some support for travel and conference expenses to see that they were, all the appropriate support was provided and that the sales tax was or was not paid appropriately. And we, again, did not receive the items that we requested. So I can't tell you whether the proper approvals and everything were done on those. Page 13, under student transportation. One thing we noted is that there's only one person in the transportation department that speaks Spanish, and given the makeup of your student population, just recommend that you look at, would it be prudent to add another Spanish-speaking person to the department? Page 14, under food service. So the food service uses Mosaic and Meal Viewer, and one of the issues that we heard was that they need to be updated because the information about the food is needed by the school nurses, particularly for students with, say, diabetes, to know the carb counts. And so that is a project that needs to get done so that we have the right information and it's not outdated.
So this came up in another matter, and we were also reviewing, so we need to look at what best practices are also from USDA, because the USDA is also, with the food supply that's going on right now in our country, some of the things that are also available to us as a district for mass purchase are not always, they change in an instant. So it's like a supply and a demand thing. So one day I could have this brand of French toast sticks, and the next day I can have that brand of French toast sticks, and they can be completely different. And what they're telling us is that we really need to look at USDA. Sometimes the information, I do agree with you on Mosaic and Meal Viewer, is not always depending on if the vendor changes. So we're trying to work on that and really look for different methods to make sure that daily, if there is a change, that our nurses and other things are communicated with. So we have to materialize that into an SOP for the spring, because we are noticing that, because there's been so many vendor changes, food changes, different things like that.
I wonder if there's a more prudent software out there that we could use. Maybe we can check with other districts, see if they're using the same thing or something newer.
So, yeah, Mosaic and Meal Viewer are kind of like the industry, like the standard. We had NutriKids before. Mosaic is the updated kind of NutriKids, and it's kind of like an internal database. So some of that has to be switched and built. It's not something, and then with some of the menu changes that can result as a supply issue, it becomes, not always as current as we need it to be.
Maybe we need additional help just on the data processing side at the lunch.
I couldn't agree with you more, and if you look at the vacancies, there's a whole bunch in that department.
Okay. Next is extra classroom, and I will tell you that normally this write-up is a lot bigger, but when we were here, there really wasn't anybody in charge of doing it. It was kind of three people sort of doing it. So we really didn't get a good understanding of how it's being handled. I do know that that the district was looking at that time to have somebody be the treasurer as a stipend position. Don't know whether that's been filled yet or not, but yeah. Onyx can probably give you more information.
Yeah, that was also the central treasurer, I think about maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago. We did approve a extra classroom treasurer that's going through the process of, the training and the processes and procedures for that. So we did do that, and she's plugging along.
All right. So the last item I have is the last page in your report. For some reason, some of the information did not print. So if you want to just pass down an updated page. And essentially what this page is a summary of all the items in the report, what the overall risk rating was, and also previous focus area reports that we received, the areas that they were in, and then going forward, just based on what we saw, the areas that we would suggest are top 3 for you to pick for focus areas for next year. But obviously, that's at the audit committee's discretion. It's just our recommendations based on our findings.
Very thorough report. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Any questions, John?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Stewart, this is going to go to the full board for approval at the next meeting. Is that the plan?
That's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So do you want me to wait until the full board approves it before I issue it final? Or do you want me to issue it final as the board has it?
You can issue a final, I think.
I don't see any changes coming.
I don't see any changes coming.
Okay.
If you guys have the final report, do you want me to make that a public document going into the next board meeting?
That's fine.
So the public can see it before the board approves it? Okay.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay, I will get that issued final and I'll send it to you.
Yep.
Very good. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Ms. Peterson, I just got one question for you. I see a lot of times, like even with the external audit, that they're not getting the information they need. I know we got a lot of problems with personnel, but it just seems to be like an ongoing problem. I looked at the past management report from 2 years ago too. The same thing, they said that they're having trouble getting the information to complete the
Well,
reports.
I think that in some areas of this, we are a large district, and we had a lot of vacancies this year, especially in this finance, and then some of it was a matter of timing, right? So I can't give you a certified reconciliation report until I have a treasurer. So some of that I'm attributing to that, because I'm like, I know we did the reconciliations because it was a part of the treasurer that was here for 2 months. Responsibility. So that, she was in the beginning of March, that didn't get approved until mid-March. We also have had a lot of auditors in the district, so that's another, so there's a request going to different people for different things. Now, in terms of some of the other things, I definitely, we check on, like, the reconciliations, so for conferences and travel, that probably wouldn't sit in the business department, that's probably in the C&I department, so I'm looking. And I've made notes for myself in terms of, when was it requested to follow up on those kind of things? Because they should have received that, but it's not always, some of those requests are not always held in the business department.
Right.
So, and if like, sometimes it's like, who has the keys? Like, I usually know where that stuff is sent, but if I'm not asked, I can't direct you in the right way.
All right, the last thing I want to talk about is end of year, where we stand. I know we got the March treasurer's report, and we got the claims auditor report for April and May. And doing my calculations, it seems like we're going to be way over the 4% again. I was just wondering if you have some sort of feel where we're at.
I can't say like kind of where we're at, but what I can say is the figures that you have don't account for some of the reconciliation and end of the year processing. We're still processing and closing out POs. We're still asking from final invoices from buildings and from districts. At the end of the year, there are a lot of different things that do hit, whether that hit budget lines in terms of retirement, in terms of foster tuition, in terms of final payment on utilities, and those things happen usually in May and the beginning of June. So I know that the new treasurer has been here working to get up to speed and to be able to prepare and look at those reports. I don't think the number I know last time you did mention a number, I don't think it's that big. We also, in those reconciliation reports, we're not really looking at some payroll items, different things that would come across. So I think Ms. Roaring did communicate kind of where we were with that, and I know that I think on the next board meeting, they're planning to give the other treasurer's report, but we really, it's kind of a premature number, kind of where we are in terms of utilities and other things for the year.
Yeah, I noticed last year in June, we spent $91 million, which is 3 times our normal expenditures. I know June is a big month, so I was going to bring the number down. But I just want to be prepared, like at the end of June, if we feel like we have a significant extra money that we could fund the reserves, and maybe pay down the bond or some interest.
So
we stay within that 4%, which is like $15,170,000, I think.
So as a part of the budget development process that we reviewed when we were giving our presentations, the end of the year and in June is when some of those extra requests that are made from principals are looked at, reviewed, and acted upon. So that is why you see that amount in June, as we try to make sure that if we can buy supplies or furniture or different things, that is when those things occur. There was also, we have to also look at the overall budget and what our debt service is. And usually we make recommendations. We are in the midst of different capital projects, so there may be a recommendation to be made to pay down on some of that interest so that doesn't carry over and to fund expenses that will have long-term financial impact at that time. So those recommendations will be forthcoming from Mrs. Roaring.
Sure, my question, on the audit, they identified HR as, let's say, systems deficient. If they're doing this for 3 years, it seems to be a common denominator. Do we have a plan, an actual plan to bring HR into the 21st century with some of the recommendations that they're making with electronic time cards, scanning, things like that?
I think that would be a question for the acting superintendent.
I agree with you.
Cause a constant drag on the system.
It is a definite things that have been brought up repeatedly, in I think every audit report that we've
Right,
had.
I think that's my point.
Yeah.
It's become a common denominator that's not getting any better.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, I need a motion to close the Audit and Finance Committee.
Second.
Meeting is closed, adjourned.